Who would have thought that once you left the US that the IRS was still going to be a responsibility? Absolutely. It's in our passports. Did you read it? Yeah, me either. But we are still obligated to file our taxes even though we have left the United States. And that's one of the things that I learned during our interview with Laura, the expat tax accountant. I just want to share a few other things that I thought was so critical that came out of that conversation. Now, Laura shared a lot of stuff, and depending on how much money you have, where you're moving to, and what your status would be when you move, you want to watch that. Let me just say, if you're leaving the country, you're going to want to watch that video. But let me just tell you quickly some quick things that I learned. One, yes, you are still obligated to fill out your IRS forms every single year, just as if you were still living in the United States. Because the United States is one of the only countries that tax its citizens. The United States doesn't really care if you're living in another country. You are still a citizen, and they are still interested in what's happening with your income. And so someone asked me a question the other day. Well, how will they know if I'm earning money abroad? Really? They probably won't know. But it kind of sounds like tax evasion, but I'm not a tax expert. But sounds like what some of those guys who lived in big mansions and only filed their taxes of making $20,000 got in trouble for because they didn't claim all their income. I don't think you want to be that person. So if you are working outside of the United States, I think you want to file that on your IRS tax forms because that is earned income. They are very interested in you. So there are ways to reduce your taxes, and doesn't mean that you're going to owe taxes, but you are still obligated to fill out the form. The United States is not a country that looks at taxes from a residency point of view. They look at it from a citizen's point of view. If you're a citizen, you are still obligated. The other thing I learned from her was double taxation. What is that? Yes, I just told you. As an American citizen, you are responsible for filing taxes with the IRS. And if you live in a country who also taxes your income, not every country does that, but some countries also tax any income that you're earning in that country. So that means you're paying taxes in that country and you're paying taxes to the US. You want to know that before you decide on a country that you want to relocate. The other thing I learned that was very, very interesting was around S Corps and LLC. Now she's going to go into a very detailed explanation. I'm just going to give you the fifth grader explanation, which basically says you better not leave this country, or you better be very aware if you leave this country and you still holding on to an S Corp. That could really affect the status of that corporation because you are no longer considered a resident of the United States. But don't take my word for it. Get the video, look and see what Laura says. And also, the other thing I learned that I thought was quite interesting was, and I made this mistake, and I'm pretty sure you heard it too. If you live outside the United States, you don't have to pay any taxes on the first $125,000 or the first $130,000, depending on what year it is that you make. I heard that and I was excited about that. So when I lived out of the United States and I was making money, I wasn't quite making $125,000 during that time. And so I was like, easy peasy. I just made all this money because I was making six figures and I didn't have to pay any taxes. Wrong. Because there is something called the bona fide test. You have to be in that country at least 330 days out of the year. Guess who wasn't? I came home for Christmas holiday. I came home for summer holidays, and that took away those days, and I lost that benefit. Now, Laura explains how you can spread that over 2 years. That's why I tell you, go look at that video. But I was so surprised when that happened to me and I wind up owing taxes. That is no fun. You know, it is so cool to collect that money with no taxes. Do you know how much money that is? Just look at your paycheck. How much goes to taxes? Can you imagine your paycheck with no taxes? Yes, I was collecting no taxes. And then I owe taxes. I don't want that to be you. So go ahead and check out that video and find out. So those are the things that I learned from Laura, the expat tax. I hope they help you as you are making your journey and you are deciding where you want to live. Consider the tax implications of the country that you're going to, because that could be a make it or break it. I don't know. It all depends on how much you're going to be making, where you're going to be making that money, where your income is coming from, what their rules are around taxation. Just be aware. That's the most important thing. You have been informed. Now, I just shared you what I learned from Laura, and of course, I possibly cannot be giving you tax advice. I'm not an accountant. I'm just sharing what I learned. This is not tax advice. This is me sharing something I learned with my friends, sharing with you. If you need tax advice, find yourself a good accountant. See you later. This is Sable, your bougie girlfriend. Continue living an elevated life.